One fateful day, I received a call from George Lucas. I thought it was about playing tennis because we used to play tennis together. Or it was some problem he had. No. He said, would you come to lunch at Universal? Sure. So I arrived. We had a wonderful lunch in the good dining room. And then he said, Kirsch, I want you to direct the second Star Wars. Do you hear the quiet? Well, that's what he heard too, because I looked at him and I wondered, are you crazy? You want me to direct the second Star Wars? Why me?
Empire Strikes Back is the middle part of a single film. It's sort of the middle act. And in the middle act of a movie or a book or anything else, the middle, not much happens. It sort of evolves the story, makes the plot more complicated. The only thing I had really was the revelation that Darth Vader was Luke's father, which is not a lot in terms of, a plot device. So I took the big set piece battle number and I put it way up at the front of the movie so it wouldn't get messed up with the revelation of the parentage of Luke. And turn that into a personal sword fight, a personal thing, make it much more of an issue between two people. The middle of it was basically Luke being trained as a Jedi in the swamp, which is not as dramatic as it could be. In that case, I had decided to split up the stories and have Leia and Han being chased around by the Empire while Luke is being trained. In the original movie, though, it was Obi-Wan Kenobi that was training him, not Yoda. Yoda didn't exist because literally in the third week of shooting the first film, I rewrote it and killed him. Then, when I went to do the second movie, I had killed off the main Jedi teacher. So I had to create a new one, and I didn't want it to be another just clone of Obi-Wan because Obi-Wan was the guy. And so I had him come back as a spirit.
Luke. Ben? You will go to the Dagobah system.
Dagobah system?
Then used Yoda, an Uber Jedi Master who taught Obi-Wan, and made him a little creature so that he would be interesting to listen to for what amounts to about 20 minutes of the movie.
I am wondering, why are you here?
I'm looking for someone.
Looking? Found someone you have, I would say.
Right.
One of the earlier things I did is I got Joe Johnston to work on Yoda to try to figure out, what he would look like so it'd be easier to write him. That really comes from a tradition in mythological storytelling, fairy tales, of the hero finding a little creature on the side of the road that seems very insignificant and not very important, who comes out to be the master wizard, the master thing, or the guide, the main guide in the movie for the hero. And so I wanted him to be a little insignificant character, somebody that, like a frog or something that you just didn't pay any attention to. And he turns out to be the most powerful Jedi in the universe.
Jedi Master Yoda. You seek Yoda.
You know him?
Take it to him, I will.
And so that was why he started out being very small and green. And then we wanted to make him attractive but strange. And so he's actually got proportions very much like a baby and with giant ears.
One of the biggest surprises, and not a very nice one, was when they showed me Yoda for the first time. Yoda without a head. Frank Oz and his associates have come up with different heads. None of them work. So Stuart Freeborn, the makeup expert, he said, can you give me a week? I'll give you the head of Yoda. He had been a sculptor. I didn't know that. He came back in a week, and on a table was a sheet covering something. I stood around and looked at it, and he said, okay, Yoda. Whipped off the sheet, And here was his head. And I looked at him, and I looked at Yoda, and I realized what everybody was realizing and couldn't say. It was a self-portrait of Stuart Freeborn. He doesn't like to admit this, but it really is.
I sat down and wrote a draft of the screenplay myself, which was where Yoda came from, where the backward talking came from, where most everything came from. The script was pretty much laid out as it is now. My opinion of myself as a writer is less than enthusiastic, and I felt that, one, I didn't want to have to go through all the drafts. I got the first draft done. It was reasonably what I wanted for the movie, I literally finished it, and the next week Larry turned in Raiders of the Lost Ark. I said, would you like to do rewrites on this script? And he said, sure.
We wrote the script in about 6 weeks, I think, because they were so far behind schedule in England, and this was all self-financed by George, you know, it was all his money, so time was of the essence.
The first thing he said is this backward talk is nonsense. He said, you know, I think it can be done better, which he did. He actually made it make sense.
Why wish you become Jedi?
George said, we're going to do this little guru, and he's sort of the, you know, he's really the font of all Jedi knowledge, and between us, we worked out this way of him sort of talking slightly inverted, you know, and slightly Eastern.
Much anger in him. Like his father.
Was I any different when you taught me?
Part of the idea of having him have a unique way of speaking, one was to create something that would fit into a little 2-foot green man's mouth and make sense. But the other one is, by doing it backwards and everything, it made the dialogue more compelling because you had to figure out what he was saying.
All right, I'll give it a try.
No. Try not. Do. Or do not. There is no try.
That way it made basically just a lot of philosophical, not very interesting dialogue, palatable for 20 minutes.
Anger, fear, aggression. The dark side of the Force are they.
You're talking about some basic tenets of wisdom in the world that 100 different religions have come to on their own. And I think it was brilliant of George to know that this story was about these basic principles.
But how am I to know the good side from the bad?
You will know.
And the character who gets to enunciate them is fun. It's like having the smartest cartoon in history. You know?
My ally is the Force. And a powerful ally it is.
Now came the day of shooting, and we were on Dagobah. And Yoda sat there and talked. I said, you know what? I've got to make him come alive. I got an idea. I said, let him be like a willful little child. He wants to try everything. He wants to try the food.
It's my dinner.
He wants to see what he's carried along.
Hey, get out of there.
He goes into the bag.
No!
He starts throwing things. He wants to try the flashlight.
Fine! Or I will help you not.
R2-D2 wants it. They have a little fight. He beats on the tin can.
Fine!
All this is improvised.
Fine!
R2.
That's how Yoda came into being, this first scene.
You move along, little fella. We got a lot of work to do.
Kirshner was a director, and he taught at USC, where I went to school. He had directed some movies and a lot of television, and I thought was a very talented director. His name came up pretty early on as somebody who was, I feel, a very major talent that had been overlooked by the film industry. He's very thoughtful and intellectual, and I think was able to understand the line between the fact that this is kind of an entertainment movie, but there's a giant subtext going on, and sort of pay attention to both of those things.
George was an amazing producer. He gave you freedom. He knew that as a director, if you feel choked, you can't work well. And I am very much an improvisational director. And so he went along with me. One day, it was early morning, we started shooting the plane coming out of the water. I look over, and there's George standing at the door, way back. I said, George, yeah, come over here. He reluctantly came over by the camera. I said, you know what we're shooting? Yeah, I know. And we said, okay, let's try it. We submerged the plane, 3/4, and made out of plywood. Now, action. We raised the plane, and as it came out of the water, the wings fell off because they were full of water, and the wood couldn't take it. And George stood there, no emotion. I said, all right, how long will it take to fix it? We can do it in an hour. Fix it. And I went and had coffee with George. You okay? Yeah. Is it going all right in your mind? Perfect. Good. 10 hours later, and we get a good take. One. Now, the usual producer would have pulled one of his 2 hairs out of his head. That's the usual, but not George. George didn't say a word. He saw the thing, one take, which I did many times because it took hours to set up. I did one take, which freaked out the crew. They couldn't manipulate it, a little fix, but they got used to it. And finally got the shot. The shot's 11 seconds long. It took 10 hours with a huge crew. That's the way the film went.
When you think about it in philosophical terms and so on, I think that Yoda suggested, to me at least, a very ancient gentleman, very wise, could be portrayed musically in a very direct and very lyrical and simple, tuneful way.
Adventure. Excitement. A Jedi craves not these things.
Yoda's theme is a very simple little tune with consonant intervals, do and mi and sol, and moves around in a very sort of youthful way almost. And Yoda is 700 or 800 years old, we're told. His character and his speech suggested, I guess to me, the innocence of real wisdom, true wisdom that Yoda seemed to always offer, was reduced to essentials and to true simplicity.
Size matters not. Look at me. Judge me by my size, do you?
It's pretty easy to work with Johnny because you sort of, give him some thoughts and then you show him the cut of the movie and then you can see what's going on and you say, I don't have to do much. He just goes and makes it beautiful. Mostly I leave John with the instructions of go ahead, save the movie, I need it.
I would have meetings early on where George would say to me, what he was creating was an other world that heretofore unseen, with characters and creatures that we don't know, we're unfamiliar with, and we don't know what they're called or how they behave. But that the musical background, which is behind all of this, might be operatic. It might be emotional in the way that 19th century operatic incidental and aria creation and the rest of it might be. So that the music gives us a kind of firm, emotional, even put it this way, comfortable feeling of where we are in terms of what's felt in the emotional aspects of the interactions of these characters and the events that happen in the film.
I love you.
I know.
His principal direction to me, which stayed with me, music shouldn't be electronic. Or he didn't say that, but by implication, It shouldn't be atonal, meaning, let's put it, the cacophony of excess modernism, maybe, to put it very simply and quickly. But rather it should be melodic and romantic and fill us with good emotions.
All of Johnny's cues are so great, and there's so many of them. You know, there's got to be at least a half a dozen cues that are good as anything that's ever been written, as far as I'm concerned. You know, they're just brilliant symphonic music with very strong and powerful themes. Each one about a particular subject, whether it's the Force, whether it's the Empire, whether it's love, no matter what it is, they're just really great pieces of music.
The main new theme to Empire Strikes Back, of course, was Darth Vader's march.
I told John that in this one that there was much more of the Empire involved in it, and I really wanted to have an Imperial theme that was, we had the Death Star theme before, but now I wanted something that was even stronger. And that it was very emotional, it was very dramatic, very operatic.
Darth Vader, I think, is one of his great creations, and his music should be certainly militaristic, and certainly a march, and certainly in a minor key, and certainly coming at you with a repetitive and powerful declamatory force, that the brass should be right in your face, the way Darth Vader is. It's the piece that I think I enjoy performing most of all the pieces in the, I guess you could say, canon of tunes created for the Star Wars films.
Aren't you afraid the Empire's going to find out about this little operation? Shut you down?
All you're looking for in any story is for there to be a conflict and a surprise and a development of something you don't expect. You know, that's how all the good stories work.
We would be honored if you would join us.
And Lando and the Cloud City was all about, you think that the people, your heroes, are safe?
I had no choice. They arrived right before you did. I'm sorry.
And then it's a giant reversal. Someone once said, you know, when you're writing a story, you take the heroes and take the hero, put him up a tree, and then you start throwing rocks at him. And that's what stories are. Suddenly, when you thought they were going to be all right, they're in chains, you know.
What's going on, buddy? You're being put into carbon freeze.
What if he doesn't survive? He's worth a lot to me.
Okay, we'd like to introduce Boba Fett. And here he is, a new character.
Boba Fett was developed to be in an animated special for television, and I liked him so much that we brought him in as one of the bounty hunters.
You are free to use any methods necessary, but I want them alive. No disintegration.
His reputation kept growing because he was so cool. He got a bigger and bigger role as time went on. Originally, that was just written as a bounty hunter.
This character, which is the deadly killer, the hired gun, you know, this character is in all the Japanese movies that George and I love and that influenced George when he was writing the first Star Wars, you know. He's a samurai character, but he's the bad samurai, you know, and in all the Westerns, he's the hired gun that comes in and is a threat to our hero. And you don't know how good his skills are, and they could be very good, and it turns out with Boba, they're very good. Boba had a great look, you know, he had capabilities you didn't quite know how quickly he could move and what he could do, but you knew he was very dangerous, and you needed that. You needed someone who was a real threat.
If you've got a hero, what you want to do is make him vulnerable. You want to say, we could kill this guy. So invest in his struggle, because it's not one of these movies where he's just going to walk away. And when I said there's another, it basically signaled to the audience that I could kill Luke. And I killed Obi-Wan. So it's like, it makes it more exciting for the movie to say, well, let's watch, because he may die in the end. But if you've convinced everybody in the nature of the movie and the way it works that, you know, it's Superman, he's never going to die, then it's much less interesting.
You know, the most secret scene of all time was the reveal that Darth is Luke's father, and they didn't want anyone, including the cast, to really know about that beforehand.
Yeah, there was only about 3 or 4 of us that actually knew that existed.
There's a lot of fun and intrigue to that.
There is no escape. Don't make me destroy you.
I wrote another scene everybody read up to the point of shooting. So there were 2 versions of that, and it was really under lock and key. I don't think I've written a lot of movies, and I don't think there's ever been a scene with quite that much weight on it as that one.
Obi-Wan never told you what happened to your father.
He told me enough. He told me you killed him.
No. I am your father.
Psychologically and symbolically, that's pretty strong stuff to end a movie on. In the middle, it's not a big deal. At the end, saying, come on, Billy, let's go watch the movie. And in the end, your father has cut your hand off and has told you he's the evilest man in the universe. That's kind of a funny way to end the movie. So I brought in several psychologists to go over whether this would have an effect on anybody. And ultimately the conclusion was that kids that can handle it will handle it. Kids that can't handle it will simply think it's a lie, because Darth Vader is an evil guy, he lies, and so he just thinks that he's lying about it. And therefore they can completely adjust to it.
Search your feelings, you know it to be true.
And in the next one I could say it was all true, and then resolve it.
When you look at Empire now, you can't really see it the way people saw it back then. There had never been anything like that, with all those ships flying around, and the density of the effects, how many different made-up elements there were in each frame. That had never been done before, and it was as though all the advances that George had made in Star Wars had just geometrically exploded in the few years, between movies. It was just what you want from movies, which is people were rocked by it. They just sat there in awe.
It's a wonderful combination of circumstances, and you have to say good fortune. The muses and the forces, and maybe the force has been with us. In the recent Star Wars tours that have been presented, the orchestra tells me that there are 7- and 8-year-olds being in there, and of course this was all created decades before they were even alive, so that it would indicate an extension over even generations of the life of something that is, in the end, ephemeral. It's film and it's music, and it suggests that it perhaps will survive all of us, which is a nice feeling.
I was privileged to be chosen to direct The Empire Strikes Back. It was one of the great adventures of my life, and also one of the most difficult, which makes it a great adventure. I think sometimes when something is difficult, it becomes your favorite.
Empire was a great challenge, both creatively and physically. It was the first film that I solely financed myself. We had some technical difficulties, primarily Yoda, which was a huge risk that we could get a puppet to look like a real animal, which hadn't been done up to that point. In the end, it turned out very well. I was very proud of it. That is the film that ultimately made Lucasfilm stand on its own as a film company and be totally independent. It was a difficult experience, but well worth the effort.